Hello and welcome to the Cinementalist podcast for Cinementalist.com. My name's Andy. Sitting next to me is Floki, our bearded dragon mascot. And sitting opposite me is Liam. How are you, dude?
I'm well, chap. How are you?
I'm very good indeed. You just call me Chap.
I did, yes.
I feel privileged.
Chap, squire,
Yeah.
good sport, old sport,
Yes, old chap.
young man.
It's the most British of podcasts. Mate.
Mate.
Geese.
Hello, mate.
Right, Gov. Yeah. You notice I'm writing a bit of the book at the moment about British police procedurals. How everybody gets called Sarge, no matter
Really?
their rank. Yeah.
Isn't that...
There's always a woman in the office that calls everybody Sarge. Doesn't matter who they are. It could be the guy refilling the water cooler.
It could be the cleaner.
Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody who's just come in with a head wound and said they've just been attacked.
Yeah, and in a British crime film or a British police procedural, whenever a suspect's brought in, he calls everybody Gov. And whenever it's somebody in the office, they call everybody Sarge, no matter their rank.
See,
So it's strange.
not like slating it, because it's actually a good four-parter that my old man put me onto, but isn't that sort of stuff best sort of relegated to, stuff like 1978's Law and Order?
Sure,
When
yeah.
people were probably largely saying stuff like gov or blag or all that sort of vernacular, but it's not really that commonplace anymore.
British cops are still stuck in the 70s in terms of their, there's a lot of Cockney rhyming slang and stuff like that. And just struck me as odd.
Stuck in the 70s in their slang, their attitudes to race.
Race, women, the whole shebang, really. Yeah. But we jest. Because at some point in the future, we will be arrested. Anyways, a bit of a tangential start to the podcast. But yes, we are here, of course, to give you a slice of film news, film reviews. And this week I've actually got some TV as well. So we're back to our usual routine.
Lovely jubbly.
Film news to start off with. Let's start with this. This is from Variety.com. It's an article entitled COVID Era Conundrum. No Time to Die may be the year's highest grossing Hollywood movie, but it could still lose millions. Over the weekend, No Time to Die eclipsed $730 million in global ticket sales, making the James Bond sequel both the year's highest grossing Hollywood film and the top performing film at the box office since COVID-19 appeared on the scene and nearly shut down the movie business. The action-packed spy spectacle, which endured several coronavirus-related delays, has become the rare pandemic-era box office hit, which is even more impressive considering adult audiences, the core demographic for No Time to Die, have been reluctant to return to theatres. However, the movie costs more than $250 million to produce, at least $100 million to promote, and tens of millions more to postpone over 16 months. Insiders say No Time to Die needs to make closer to $900 million to break even, a feat that would have been realistic had a global health crisis not entirely upended the theatre industry. As a result, the film now stands to lose $100 million in its theatrical run, according to sources close to production. Other industry sources suggest the losses wouldn't quite reach the 9-figure mark, although they would still be substantial.
Oh dear.
Yes, so No Time to Die, massively successful, but it doesn't seem to matter, which is a bit of a bummer, really, isn't it?
Oh, fucking hell. Well, I mean, virtually a sort of 2-year wait now, and all that hope holding out for tentpole films, or at least one tentpole films, if not several, to really, really resurrect it and take full charge at the box office. And that's a calamity fuck.
I wonder how much those production costs were accrued because of the delay. Because I've done like production budgets and things before for like big production stuff, and often it's really based on like a time period kind of thing. It's when sponsorship money comes in, when you got to get that money out by. There's sort of a flow in and out that you need to keep to. I wonder how much it would have cost had things been hunky dory, or whether it would still be in trouble. And they also had to do a lot of reshoots as well, didn't they? Because we covered it on the news a little while back, but a lot of the sponsorship deals that are obviously crucial to accruing money for the film. The sponsors were very unhappy because the film was now advertising old products.
Yeah.
There's no point advertising the 3-year-old Sony phone, which was brand new when they shot it. So it doesn't seem to have gone all that well. For what it's worth, MGM, the studio behind Bond's latest adventure, disputes this math. In a statement to Variety, the company insisted No Time to Die didn't just break even, but was a moneymaker. Unnamed and uninformed sources suggesting the film will lose money are categorically unfounded and, put more simply, not true, MGM spokesperson said in a statement. The film has far exceeded our theatrical estimates in this time frame, becoming the highest grossing Hollywood film in the international marketplace and passing F9 to become the highest grossing Hollywood film since the pandemic. With the PVOD release of the film already doing stellar home viewing business, all while continuing to hold well theatrically, No Time to Die will earn a profit for MGM, both as an individual film title and as part of MGM's incredible library. I mean, they would say that, wouldn't they? I really don't know who to believe on this one.
No. I mean, they don't want to lose face, but it doesn't sound like the people who did the original maths. I mean, would they just pull that out of their arse for no particular reason whatsoever?
They couldn't possibly have accounted for the fact that it was going to be delayed by 16 months, etc., etc. It does stand to reason that it would have made a loss. And it does stand to reason that MGM would come out and say, no, everything's absolutely fine. Because Hollywood accounting is, Hollywood accounting.
Creative.
Yeah. I mean, they hide numbers and figures all the time. It's a big part of the business.
What you just mentioned about production costs, I mean, that sounds like a very, very realistic variable.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, it's a shame that, all of that postponements and really hard work and alterations would lead to an inevitable loss. That does suck.
There's also the ongoing residuals to think about, which can't be accounted for at this point. So obviously it's going to make it to more streaming services as time goes on. There'll be Blu-ray sales, all that kind of stuff. And you can't really put a final figure on a film's eventual take. Some films make more money in their second or third year than they do in their first. It's such a huge film and it's been so well received. I doubt it's any trouble for the franchise really in the long run. But in terms of your yearly shareholders meeting, I think they might have some questions. But there you go.
When you look at it that way, I mean, you wouldn't say like, oh, well, Thriller might be the best-selling album on earth, but it's not like 500 million people turned up to see Michael Jackson in concert. It's like, well, yeah, because you couldn't really fit him in there.
Sure. Yeah.
It
is that kind of lateral thinking. Yeah.
The ultimate sales, in terms of franchise memorabilia, etc., that is relevant. So,
yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, good point.
Never mind how many Aston Martins.
Yes, yeah.
Another article here from NME.com. Paul Thomas Anderson says all movies should preferably be 2 hours long. This is something, before we even read the article, this is something I've been banging on about for quite some time. But yes, the director who is currently promoting his latest film, Licorice Pizza, discussed the ideal running time for movies when asked if he'd ever consider making a TV series. Speaking to the New York Times, Anderson said, "The limited series is a great format when it works. It's exciting. Then again, so are series. I've never dipped a toe in that world, but I can imagine it being very difficult to sustain the life of a story for more than 2, 3, or 4 seasons. No one asked me to do television. I'm just sort of playing in my own corner of this sandbox. As a writer, I think we have fantasies when you struggle with editing material down. I have so much material, perhaps this is a limited series. When in fact, no, it's not. You just need to edit down your story. I mean, a film should preferably be 2 hours. That's when they're at their best. I've missed that mark multiple times, but that's really the goal."
So he's saying 2 hours maximum.
Yeah, the article does point out as well.
Like every film should be 2 hours.
Yeah. It's a contentious issue, isn't it? Because, I mean, for example, I love the original Ben-Hur. And that's 3.5 hours long.
Yeah.
Lawrence of Arabia, if I remember correctly, is closer to 4. There are some great films that are huge runtimes, but I think you really have to justify it to get to that. These are epics. And when it's like a Sword and the Sandals epic, for example, that kind of runtime makes sense. I do think there's something to the famous old Hitchcock quote of, I believe it was Hitchcock anyway, so that the runtime of a film should be limited to the endurance of the human bladder. I think anything more than 2, you've really got to have something in the story that's you've really got to get to. It's really got to justify it.
Yeah, there are. I mean, for example, you mentioned Sword and Sandals and historical epics, and I know I've mentioned it before, but as a sort of poetic saga of a gangster film, I think that Once Upon a Time in America justifies its long duration.
Yeah, I would agree.
But there are so many. I mean, like, does something like Justice League have any business being 4 hours long?
Yeah, that's the sort of thing I'm thinking about, actually. There's been a number of films I've reviewed over the past couple of years that are just seem to be long for long's sake. Like there was an arbitrary thing within the marketing department saying, oh, by the way, if it's going to compete with this film, it needs to be the same length or longer. Especially superhero stuff. And you always get that baggy middle and that really overly long, wanky end, which sort of ruins the film.
See, people are like, I know that when I mentioned Justice League, there would be people going, oh, another superhero pot shot. But no, you can extrapolate to anything. You wouldn't make, one of the installments of the Fast and Furious or the Transporter films 3.5 to 4 hours long.
Yeah.
So if a film is essentially meant to be bubblegum popcorn, just brain candy, pure visceral entertainment that you don't really need to think about, then yeah, I'd say 2 hours is the absolute maximum, preferably a bit shorter than that.
I hate to quote Lord Kermode again on this podcast, but we do on occasion. But I always liked his thing of Quentin Tarantino needs someone standing behind him in the editor's room with a mallet, above his head, going 2 hours.
2 hours, Quentin.
2 hours, that's it. Because as much as I do love Tarantino's work, he's got a tendency to let things run too long as well. And you sort of look at it and go, I'm enjoying what's here, but I can't help feel the story is suffering because it's being arbitrarily lengthened. Something to be said for being concise and in and out. Unless you're doing a huge, epic, sweeping tale, in which case, it does make sense.
It wasn't actually too long ago that I stuck. I did a rewatch of The Hateful Eight, and while I did enjoy it, definitely, I couldn't help but feel like there's just a little bit too much paddy stuff in here.
Sometimes you feel like it
doesn't need to be as long as it is.
Yeah, sometimes you feel like you're watching the deleted scenes.
Yeah,
which they're all well and good, but it's like that famous bit in Apocalypse Now Redux, where he put back in this bit where the soldiers come across a French colonial plantation in the jungle. And it's a great scene. It's a wonderful scene because they sit and they discuss colonialism and it adds a whole different dimension to the themes of the film. It's a really, really good scene. But me and just about everybody else that watched Apocalypse Now Redux sat there and went, yeah, that's a really good scene, but it ruins the pacing. And that's why it was taken out.
I imagine you might have had the same thing. I've had a lot of people rebut me with... But that cut, that's the way that Coppola intended for it to be seen. It's like, that doesn't mean it works.
Yeah, and it's worse.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but the film as it is, in its theatrical form, that's the version of Apocalypse Now that works perfectly.
Yeah.
These longer ones are not as good. I don't care if it's I'm sorry, I don't really give a shit if it's what Coppola would have preferred. It doesn't work as good as the theatrical run.
I have as well, unfortunately, come across people that have been recommended Apocalypse Now. And so when they've gone looking for a version of it, they thought, well, there's the Redux. That's supposed to be the best version. I'll watch that. And they watched it and thought, yeah, it's a good film, but it's a bit baggy in places. And that's not the film.
No.
You saw a different movie.
The first cut works, is tighter. The screenplay is exactly right. Everything is just completely on point. And yeah, with the plantation scene, it just starts to sort of break. You can. I remember seeing that and sort of feeling the momentum really start to sag in the worst way. And yeah,
I kind of want to see that as a separate film. I quite like a film of the soldiers sitting around a French plantation, table talking about the colonialism of Vietnam and have it be like a character drama piece that Francis Ford Coppola shot. I'd like to see that, but it doesn't fit in the middle of a descent into madness tale, which is what
it's interesting in and of itself. Yeah, but yeah, another film, would be welcome.
So yeah, primarily I agree. I think if your film's going to go over 2 hours, you better have a damn good reason for it, and not because the production company told you to. But there you go.
No, maybe they'll think, if we make this really long, people will take it more seriously on a cerebral level.
Maybe.
I don't really know if that is their logic, and I can't really make head nor tail of that logic, but, that's just one possibility.
My last article here this week, this is from filmstories.co.uk. The classic heist movie Heat is getting an accompanying novel a quarter of a century after its release. Michael Mann's Heat is one of those films that continues to dominate cinema conversations over 25 years since its release. Whenever film fans talk about best LA movies, the film is in the running. As a film with a very strong critical reception that hasn't diluted at all in the quarter century since its release, fans of Heat will be pleased to hear that the film is getting both a prequel and a sequel of sorts in the form of a novel that may yet extend to a series of books. It's something that's been on the cards for years but has finally come to fruition. Writer and director Michael Mann has revealed that the book will be coming out next summer and will flesh out the stories of Al Pacino and Robert De Niro's respective cop and robber, as well as other characters from the film. It's so vivid, worked out, and thorough that compelled us. We've written a novel. Not on Heat, but everything preceding Heat and everything following Heat. And it's because these characters are so vivid. Mann revealed just how much backstory he has on each character already, simply from making the movie all those years ago. Giving Al Pacino's cop character as an example, he says, I have a complete biography of Vincent Hanna, from when he grew up in Illinois, who his father was, driving trucks for some rural Illinois bootleggers, and how he wanted to flee for something else, and it was all to go to some lousy local college. But instead he joins the Marines and winds up part of the Tet Offensive in Vietnam, what he sees there and his desire to go to law school. If that wasn't exciting enough for Heat fans, Mann also hinted that the story of Heat might even be returning to screens in some capacity, telling the podcast The Rewatchables that it's a stack about 10 inches high on my desk right now. We're on it, and I'm putting time into that and a screenplay I can't tell you about. But I absolutely want to make a movie of the Heat prequel.
Wow. Okay.
Now, ordinarily, going back over such beloved, hallowed ground, I mean, the intro to that article is completely right. Heat is considered one of the greatest films ever made. We discussed it many times on the podcast. We think it's one of the greatest films ever made.
Yep.
Ordinarily, going back to stuff like that, I'd say, no, leave it alone. Let it sit frozen in time and be what it is. The fact that it's Michael Mann himself, he's the primary mover behind this. He's the one working on the script. He's the one working on the book. I mean, yeah, would I like to see a Michael Mann-led Heat prequel? Yeah, I think I would.
Definitely be interested in that. I mean, as you were saying all of that, I was just thinking to myself, interesting from a certain vantage point, but in particular, the character of Neil McCauley, De Niro's character. I mean, one of the reasons that he works, and it incorporates De Niro's famed idiosyncrasies that he's had over the course of his career. He talks in his speech can be defined by brevity. He never says more than he needs to, and he has a very economic kind of lifestyle. And the only person he really gives any information about himself to is Evie during the first night they spend together. And I think it's that mystique that makes it work. I don't know, like loads of backstories and stuff. I just think the compact as is story of the two men in the film, I do personally think that just works fine.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. And there's always the George Lucas effect as well, where if you try and go back and retcon everything, then you sort of ruin the mystique. It's the midichlorians and the Force thing, isn't it?
To me, I mean, in particular, Neil McCauley, but even with Vincent Hanna, there's a part of me that I don't really want to know a lot of their backstory. I'm just kind of, because the way that Heat presents them, they are people that you can get fully immersed with and invested in. And I mean, who am I to say that? I might be proved totally wrong, and Michael Mann might come out with something that's actually very cool and, like comes at it from an original, intelligent angle, something a refreshing angle. I hope that's the case, as always.
It does as well seem to me at least, that idea seems to be better served by a book than perhaps a film. I mean, I'm quite eager to read the book, and I will do. It's been ages actually since we recommended a book on the podcast. We do occasionally do book reviews and things in the premium. I may end up doing that.
I mean, I will be surprised, but just even in a younger fashion, the notion of Vincent Hanna and Neil McCauley being played by anybody else.
Yeah, casting a bit of bitch.
It just I don't know, just that idea just feels very strange to me. Like,
I'm not sure about not to say that there's not brilliant young actors out there.
No.
You were talking about Al Pacino and Robert De Niro. I mean, they're the absolute titans of cinema. To find a modern equivalent is going to be, it's hard going, isn't it? But interesting stuff at the very least.
Definitely interesting. And whenever I sort of have superficial, judgy misgivings, I know I reiterate a lot, but I always want to be proven wrong. I always want to be proven dead wrong. Who doesn't? Apart from narcissistic twats. I'm not saying I'm not one of those. I just like to think I'm not, but fingers crossed.
Us narcissistic twats sitting in a small room talking to ourselves for the internet's benefit. Anyway, speaking of which, Liam has got 2 reviews for you this week. 2 film reviews. Take it away at your own pace, my friend.
Well, first up, we've got a new comedy horror titled Black Friday. I only came across this a few days ago. This is directed by Casey Tebow. Don't know who that is. Sorry. But
the name's somewhat familiar, actually.
Really?
Yeah, it could just be.
You've been doing more legwork and preliminary research than I have then, mate.
Nice. Poured me a beer in a bar once or something like that. Yeah. Sorry, carry on.
I'm scrounging for change for my film that I've got. No, so this takes place in, I think they're more predominant in the United States, though I think we may have some over here, the big box stores. Like a gigantic version of Toys R Us.
Oh, like Target and Walmart and that sort of stuff.
This is like a big box toy store. I think it's called We Love Toys. Enormous place, the size of a couple of warehouses, just full to the brim with all the kinds of shit that parents would beat each other up to get for their kid at Christmas. And this store is managed by a man named Jonathan, who is played by Bruce Campbell as a sort of little present to horror fans out there. he is one of those very kind of profoundly insecure, megalomaniacal corporate types. He loves his job as a store manager because basically he gets to tell people what to do, people who would otherwise probably not listen to him in any other context. So he's a bit of a retail, it's gone to his head knob, essentially. Well, the primary character in the film would probably be Ken, played by... No, it's either Devon Sawyer or Devon Sawa. That guy, I think he was in the Final Destination films.
Okay, yeah.
He's in a few horror films. He hasn't really been in anything for a very long time, or nothing that I've seen. But Ken is one of the employees at We Love Toys, and he's the kind of guy in his early 40s, but he still trains all the time, and he's got a couple of kids, and he's estranged from his wife. And in the opening of the film, he's dropping them off to see their mother for Thanksgiving weekend, because as indicated by the title, this is taking place on Black Friday, which I believe from the point of recording today, that's actually tomorrow, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Thanksgiving for Americans.
It is indeed. Happy Thanksgiving, our American friends.
As usual, we'll be late, but, I hope you had a good one.
We don't have that over here because it wouldn't make any sense, but, always glad to hear other people having a good time.
I've always liked the idea of Thanksgiving. I think we should have it in this country, like having a mini Christmas before Christmas. Sounds kind of cool.
Yeah, it's just... I like the idea of Thanksgiving because of what people do at it. It's just that it wouldn't really make any sense in a British context.
But do any holidays make sense? It's just another excuse to eat turkey, really.
No, that is the CINEMENTALIST exclusive campaign. Bring Thanksgiving to the UK because reasons.
Yeah, we've been looking for a cause celebre. It could be that, couldn't it? Yeah.
Eat 2 big fuck-off turkeys a year. But, Ken, as played by Devon Sawyer / Sawa. His name is spelled Sawa. I don't fucking know.
Sure, but pick one and go with it.
I should have looked it out. Mr. Sawa. He works at We Love Toys, and he's kind of, as I said, he's like a guy in his early 40s. He trains all the time. He is got a bit of a romance going on with a much younger woman there named Marnie, played by Ivana Baquero, who, I predominantly know her as Ophelia from Pan's Labyrinth. She was the little girl in that. Now she's all grown up. And there's a May-December thing going on between them because she's got to be early 20s. And as I said, he's probably about 20 years older, but he's kind of like the buff, sort of cool older man who lets things wash over him, and he still kind of pretends he's in high school, and he just treats the job as a bit of a laugh. So you got those two. You got Chris, played by Ryan Lee, who he's the much younger guy working there. He's sort of got a kind of there's a paternalistic friendship going on between him and Ken. He gets belittled by his family a lot for working at a big toy store, and he seems to have a lot of frustrated aspirations. And then you got Brian, played by Stephen Peck, who is the floor manager, somebody who really relishes his job and has a bit of a job's worth stick up his arse, very catty towards all the other two. So basically, you have a big box toy store with a bunch of stock characters as employees. And through some set of circumstances, the braying customers outside who are determined to get into this place and, as I say, beat the shit out of each other to get their hands on all the discount toys, which is something that actually happens. And it's something that's recreated to rather intense effect in the early scenes of the film, plus the monstrous rude cuntiness of the general public, which everyone who's ever worked in retail will be familiar with. It does that very well. And but they have been inexplicably contaminated by some kind of monstrous alien parasite, which deforms them and turns them into, violent, marauding, extraterrestrial zombie monster things who are just essentially trying to stage a universal takeover. And they're attacking We Love Toys, and the people inside have got to put aside their differences and team up to stop it.
Okay.
And Black Friday it's whatever you're picturing from my description, it's exactly that. It is a horror, it is a comedy horror with a bunch of stock characters teamed up to fight off an invasive, evil, supernatural. I suppose if you could say aliens are supernatural, maybe they are from a certain angle, a threat like that. And for the duration, it kind of works as a relatively pleasing time killer. There's a lot of gags in here, and there are some that don't land, but there are some that do land. I thought Bruce Campbell was actually quite good as Jonathan. The way he played this really pathetic corporate type with sort of like very latently sociopathic tendencies. He fully admits that he likes telling people what to do and he likes power tripping. And but then as the film goes on, the sort of mook smile, if you like, the forced smile and the customer's always right mentality that he constantly parrots begin to crack a little bit, which suggests that he's not as happy as he professes to be. But, his performance is quite good. And Michael Jai White turns up as Archie, one of the employees. Michael Jai White was probably my favourite thing about this because it's him in this ridiculous kind of toy store uniform, which is like a long sort of matron's apron with the company logo emblazoned on it, but it's Michael Jai White in all his beefed up martial artist glory. So you see there's several sequences of him kicking the living fuck out of people, and I've always been a big fan of White. I like his stuff a lot. So his contribution to the film is good fun. But yeah, all in all, Black Friday, it really is just it's fun for an hour and a half. And then once it's done, it's just completely and utterly forgotten about it. It's predictable. Some of the creature effects are pretty cool, but you know exactly what lane this is traveling down. I can't say that there's anything here where, and they do a nice little spin on this or such and such, and the way they handle X and Y actually has a sort of bit of panache and originality to it. Nah, it's total formula, straight down the line.
So it's sort of Friday night popcorn stuff.
Yeah, it's Friday night popcorn stuff, but it's
not the worst thing in the world.
It's not the worst thing in the world, and the sort of minimum amount of entertainment that the filmmakers would obviously hope the audience to have. I'd say I had that, more or less. I know it sounds like a bit unsure and equivocating, but it didn't suck balls, but simultaneously, it's not something I would recommend because it doesn't have anything that sort of makes it unique or makes it a fresh spin in any way. It follows the checklist in terms of the stock characters, in terms of who gets killed first, in terms of bitter rivalries, between the main ensemble. It just does that. It does that. You really can't say anything else beyond that. And at the end, it sort of does a thing which a lot of horror films do, and it's kind of hokey when you don't do it right, which it teases at like a possible follow-up. And all I'm really saying is, unless you're going to reinvent the wheel in some way, please don't, because this one is a good time waster, but there's literally nothing else that can be said about it. And yeah, if there's nothing else that you can find, stick it on for a laugh.
Yeah, fair enough.
And then next up, Ghostbusters Afterlife, the fourth movie in the Ghostbusters franchise.
Curious about this.
Directed by Jason Reitman, who is the son of Ivan Reitman, who directed Ghostbusters 1 and 2. Now, this film takes place in 2021, so it's 32 years after the second film. Obviously, the first one was in 84, the second one was in 89. In the second one, you had the boys defeating, was it Vargo, the Carpathian, the fucking scary dude in the painting. So this is 32 years later exactly, chronologically. And as the film opens, you see a car in the middle of the night in bumfuck nowhere hurtling down the deserted backroads highway. And a guy seems to be desperately tangling with some unseen growly force. And he exits the car and he makes his way to a great big spooky looking farmhouse down the end of a windy dirt track in the middle of these fields. And he's standing on the edge of the porch and he appears to be trying to trap some sort of unseen and very scary sounding entity. But he's not particularly successful in this. And whoever this chap is ends up succumbing to this force. We then cut to a woman named Callie, played by the brilliant Carrie Coon. I'm a big fan of her. I like her in a lot of stuff. Callie is a young woman with two children. She's got Trevor, played by Finn Wolfhard, who I believe is in Stranger Things.
Yep.
And Phoebe, played by McKenna Grace. And she's begging her landlord for an extension because they're just on the verge of being evicted and she's got nowhere else to go. But he is sort of superficially sympathetic, but he says you've got to clear out. She finds out that the only other place that she can immediately move to is the spooky, dilapidated old farmhouse scene in the opening of the film, because it's been bequeathed to her by her now deceased father. And so her and the kids, they go there. They're immediately kind of freaked out by it. The kids, Phoebe is enrolled in a local school. Trevor gets a job. Trevor meets a local guy named Lucky at a diner and lies about his age, saying he's 17 when he's actually 15 to get a job there. Phoebe is enrolled in a local community school where the teacher is a very, very quirky and strange seismologist named Gary Gruberson, played by Paul Rudd. And his classes literally consist of him saying to the class, okay, today we're going to watch Cujo. And then he just puts a movie on and just goes in the back and just leaves the students to do whatever they want to do.
I always love those teachers.
Yeah, because
everybody loves those teachers.
Because in his words, he's like, the people here, the kids here, not trying to be mean, they're not particularly bright. And I don't want to give them a hard time, so I thought I'd put some highly entertaining movies on about rabid dogs for them.
Good for you.
So he's kind of a cool guy. And Phoebe is at the school and she meets a very quirky young kid, because Phoebe is a massive maths and science nerd. She is like your sort of brilliantly headstrong, like nerdy women type characters. And she immediately catches the attention of this young man whose name is only given as Podcast, because he makes a podcast about mysteries and paranormal phenomena, and he only has one subscriber. And he immediately takes a shine to her, and she sort of uneasily makes a friendship with him. And Callie is sort of trying to do the best by her kids and accept the fact that their old home is now gone, and now she's here in this place that needs some drastic work. In Somerville, Oklahoma is the name of the town, by the way. And they're all just basically saying, well, we're here now, we've got to make the best of it. Well, this farmhouse in Somerville, Oklahoma, it's located, this is a mining town, and the mines are called the Shandor Mines. Now, in the original movie, the building that Dana Barrett lives in was said to be constructed by a man named Ivo Shandor. And he also seems to have set up mining operations in this little town, Somerville, in the middle of bumfuck nowhere in Oklahoma. And as Phoebe is sort of milling about the house, she starts noticing strange things moving all by themselves, weird noises. And then she looks under a chair and she discovers a PKE reader, which people will know as the thing with the two things that come up and the lights buzzing on it. And, it whirs whenever she puts it, whenever she hovers it around, in certain directions. And Trevor is fucking about in the garage, and he sees a big shape with a great big, like, dusty cloth dragged over it. And he pulls it up with some effort, and he finds a banged up old car in there with a license plate Ecto 1.
Hey.
And a very familiar logo emblazoned on the side of it.
Cheers in the cinema.
Yes. Now, as I mentioned, Callie's father, who bequeathed her this property, it was upon his death. So you can probably guess who occupied this farmhouse before they moved in. Trevor and Phoebe are the grandchildren of one of the Ghostbusters. Which they find out through a series of extraordinarily mad events. Phoebe it's weird, like she quickly becomes quite accustomed to the presence of something supernatural in the house, but the supernatural presence in the house isn't something that's actually malevolent. But in the nearby mines, something very creepy and dangerous is brewing. And so Phoebe, with the help of her brother and Podcast, and eventually her mother and Gary, the teacher, who starts to sort of has a burgeoning thing going on with Callie, these four essentially have to unite and discover what the fuck is going on in the Shandor mines and hopefully put a stop to it once and for all with this snazzy new equipment that they've found. So yes, Ghostbusters for a new generation.
Sure.
Basically. Yeah. Now, I really enjoyed the first two a lot. I just love them. I watched both of them on repeat when I was a kid. And I actually watched the two of them very recently. Maybe there's a really big nostalgia thing for me about it, but I absolutely adore them. It really gives me that warm and fuzzy feeling. Ghostbusters Afterlife, the thing is, the first two were very quip heavy, especially with Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd on board. And those movies are essentially about the comic sort of interchange between the characters with this intentionally goofy supernatural shenanigans in the back, just as like a sort of nice kind of quirky unifier of sorts. And that's what made them so special. Ghostbusters Afterlife, interestingly, with Finn Wolfhard on board, this does a kind of coming of age thing in the vein of stuff like Stranger Things. But at the same time, it functions as a wonderful tribute to Harold Ramis. And, you know, I left the cinema earlier, and I was very, very, like, throat lumpy because Harold Ramis had talked in 2009 about how he wanted to do a brand new Ghostbusters, and he was working on it. But in 2014, he very sadly died. And people were just wondering, like, are they ever going to do a third one? What are they actually going to do if they do a third one? And then, so what Jason Reitman and co have done, they've unified this brand new direction where it's this kind of strange things. It's maybe a little bit more horror heavy, a little bit more evocative of stuff like, you know, the quirky coming of age horrors people find in themselves. They've unified that, but it's a love letter to the 1984 film. A lot of people have accused this film of fan service. Now, as far as I'm concerned, fan service is only a pejorative when it gives the fans what they want at the expense of any canonical logic. Ghostbusters Afterlife doesn't do that. It doesn't do that at all, I don't think. It does pay homage very lovingly to the very first film, but it also has it goes down a new stylistic direction and a new atmospheric direction. There's still lots of gags in there, and for the most part, I do think that they worked. The only criticism I would have of the film at all is that in the sort of first quarter, the introductory scenes of the character felt ever so slightly baggy, but that is literally the only bad thing that I have to say about it. And all in all, this actually gave me a really big, teary, nostalgic shot.
Wow.
Right to the nads.
I have to say, I mean, I've seen some mixed reactions on this kind of thing. I did wonder what you were going to make of it because I know you're such a huge fan.
Do you like Ghostbusters?
I do, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
I mean, it does give fans what they want, but as I say, if you're giving fans what they want in a way that makes no fucking sense, then yeah, tear that shit apart. But it's a tribute to Ramis, quite explicitly so. And I think it's actually a very touching and very, very poignant tribute to him. I really like the way that it marries the love for the original with this sort of Stranger Things type atmosphere. But there's nothing here. There's nothing here that's going to make anybody scratch their heads and go, huh? And what is the film for if not for people who love the two originals so much? That's what it's all about. It's a tribute to those films. It's a tribute to the fandom. It's a tribute to the hard work that everyone involved put into it. And yeah, I mean, people listening, if you haven't seen it, you'll probably think, you know, does such and such happen in it? I'm not going to give away anything specific, but basically, if the first film especially, but if the first two films hold a big place in your heart, it's very explicit that they hold the exact same place for Jason Reitman, and I think that he's made a very tactful, fun new adventure for fans of the franchise, and I don't want to get too in a viper's nest here, but I, along with many other people, consider this the third film. Maybe that's somewhat inaccurate, but I don't really care about that, to be honest.
No,
because it is I think this is the sequel that the first two films deserved. And it's different from them in many regards, but it still is a very satisfying and somewhat moving love letter to the first two films. And I enjoyed it very much. And yeah, I no shame in admitting I did get a bit teary-eyed. A lot of fun. Yeah, just really good adventure, really good popcorn. Great if you love the first films.
Fantastic, yeah. I think I'll give that a look.
Yeah, do it. Yeah.
Okay then, well, TV of the week. Here we go. And as promised last week, I'm going to do Succession.
Yes, I've still yet to watch any of this show, and I've been looking forward to what you have to say about it.
Well, Succession sort of came out of left field for me personally because I was aware of its existence. It's been running since 2018. And I was aware that it was getting really good critical reception, but it didn't have huge viewer numbers or whatever. And it was always something that was sort of on the back burner with me. because I review TV for the podcast, you've got to sort of pick and choose, unfortunately, because there's only really one thing I can squeeze in a week, sometimes two if they're going to be short reviews. And as a result, I just simply never got around to it. And then right before the release of season 3, which is running currently, I suddenly noticed that Succession was everywhere. It was starting to crop up on daytime TV programs in the fashion segment and things like that. And I thought, oh, bollocks, it's one of those ones that I've missed. I knew it had a great stellar cast and everything. And I was thinking to myself, like, how the hell am I going to be able to go through those 2 seasons, go into season 3 and do a review of it? Because I've never normally got time to get through that much content. With doing a series a week, it's kind of difficult to stage that sort of thing. But then you very, very cleverly announced you were going to go on holiday for a couple of weeks. And I thought, well, if not now, then when? So while you've been off gallivanting, as you put it the other week, I have been watching Succession.
That was my power play. I did it so you could do that, man.
Yeah, thank you.
See how smart I am.
Yeah, no, thank you, man. It was amazing foresight on your part. But yes, like I said, been running since 2018. You can find it on Sky Atlantic in the UK. I believe it's an HBO thing in the US, but I mean, it's everywhere at the moment, as you would expect. And yeah, it tells the trials and tribulations of the fictional Roy family. Now, this is helmed by Logan Roy, played by Brian Cox, who is sort of an elder statesman at this point. He's a billionaire, and he founded the Waystar Royco company, which is now this huge sort of media conglomerate in the US. A lot of references to, well, very thinly veiled references actually, to him essentially being Rupert Murdoch and the whole Fox News debacle, whatever your particular take on that may be. But he's reaching his later years now, and he has a large family underneath him. We have his son, Kendall, played by Jeremy Strong. Kendall's younger brother, Roman, played by Kieran Culkin, Macaulay Culkin's brother.
Yeah.
We have Shiv, who's played by Sarah Snook. Her partner, Tom Wamsgans, played by Matthew McFadden. Connor, his eldest, played by Alan Ruck. And Nicholas Braun, who plays Greg, his bumbling young nephew. And we first meet Greg actually when he's working at one of the theme parks that is owned by the Waystar Royco company. The company seems redundant when it's got Royco on it because obviously that stands for company, but I'm going to keep saying it throughout this podcast, so get used to it. He's actually a bit down on his luck, is poor Greg, and he's actually working as one of the the characters in suits inside one of the many theme parks that they own. He has a very bad first day on the job and ends up throwing up inside the suit because a bunch of kids spin him around. He actually throws up through the eyes of this cartoon character and he's fired immediately. And he speaks to his mum, and his mum says, you know what? You're the nephew of the actual owner of the park and the owner of this huge company. Why don't you go to New York and meet up with the rest of your family and see if you can make a success of yourself there? So that's where Greg goes. The Roy family are on the cusp of announcing Logan's retirement. And everyone is waiting with bated breath, hence the title Succession, to see who his successor may be. Unfortunately, he throws them a curveball by announcing that actually, although he was thinking about retiring very, very soon, he might just stay on for a few years longer. And this starts a huge amount of infighting between all of his children as to whether he's in a right state of mind because he's getting to that age in life. He's starting to become medically infirm. And as to who's going to run the company and move things forward. Because he's very much old media, he's based in things like newspapers and TV news and that sort of thing. Whereas the feeling amongst the family is that they're going to quickly get overtaken. They're dinosaurs and the digital age is coming. And although they're one of the top companies in the world at this point, if they don't put the ground roots down now for things like machine learning and selling data and all that kind of stuff, that they are quickly going to be overrun. This is the big worry within the family. All of this is brought to a head when Logan suffers a brain hemorrhage on a helicopter ride, which puts him in hospital for some time. And as a result, his family begin a huge power struggle to see who will be the successors of Waystar Royco. So that's sort of where I'm going to leave it. I mean, it's one of those things where there's 3 seasons of this and the plot moves on from that point, but that's your initial setup before things get going. So what to say about Succession? First and foremost, it's Shakespeare. I mean, it is pure, unadulterated Shakespeare. It's King Lear, it's Macbeth, it's Richard II, it's Hamlet, it's the aging king clinging on to power and all his underlings underneath him scheming and backstabbing each other to try and grab the tail of the snake as to where everything goes next. And to compare it to Shakespeare, I mean, That's not without reason. I'm not just saying it's Shakespeare because it's playing with those same factors that Shakespeare liked to play with, the royal houses in turmoil, all that kind of stuff. It's Shakespeare translated to the modern age in a modern New York Wall Street kind of setting. And we're talking about sort of that level of writing. What you're really watching here is a modern tragedy play out on screen. But rather than being a flat out tragedy, the primary thing that comes across in it is actually humor. It's really disgustingly witty without ever falling into like a full on comedy. It's got such a lightness with its comedy that the lines seem to come in at an angle where you don't expect them. You're getting so caught up in all these different characters, and every single one of them could have been a cardboard cutout stereotype. One of the massive strengths of this show is that every single character is given a degree of background and depth. So you've got those layers of tragedy, you've got those levels of witty irreverence, and you've actually got characters that have become surprisingly well formed almost immediately. I mean, let's go through them for a second. You've got Kendall, played by Jeremy Strong. Now, he sees himself as the natural heir to the business. He considers himself to be the one that was groomed by his father and the person that could most easily take over in a successor kind of role. But although he's got some business savvy, he's massively a foot in mouth blunt. He's got this sort of high opinion of himself that, again, could easily be like 2D characterization, but he thinks he's a bit hip hop. He thinks he's a bit street. He thinks he's the new up and coming millennial generation that can take the family forward. But actually, although he's got real business acumen and he's actually a good strategist in his own right, he doesn't really have the balls to take on his father because his father is this growling bear of a man. He is the king in all respects. And he comes from the old school world of business, which is essentially to say that he's racist, homophobic, transphobic. I mean, if you could think of a phobic, Logan Roy is it. Brian Cox's performance.
Is he misogynist?
Oh, yes, very, very much so. I mean, he's a real dinosaur of a guy. But as a result, I mean, he's a fucking tyrannosaur. And everybody knows it. Even though he's becoming old and infirm, even though his mind's starting to go, he's still got enough of his acumen left. And crucially, most of his cutthroatness left.
He's a fierce, pitiless bastard.
Yeah, in very much that Shakespearean king kind of way. We're dealing with that level of writing. Brian Cox's performance of this, by the way, is absolutely superb.
I would expect nothing less.
He's tyrannical in a way. Tyrannical captains of industry and business leaders, that's an old trope. That's an old stereotype. In this show, it actually feels kind of a little scarier. But again, he's actually quite a well-rounded character because he's so acutely intelligent and he's so acutely aware of the way everyone's scheming around him. And, despite the fact that he is starting to lose his mind and lose his position a little bit, he is still very much aware of his place in the universe and what it means for the company going forward, for each one of his various for each one of his various children to move in. He knows that some of them will be fuck ups, some of them have good qualities, some of them have bad qualities, and he plays them against each other in this very mercenary fashion.
He's a sociopath as well.
Yeah, his catchphrase, by the way, is "fuck off," which I think says most about the man. And
I love the man already.
Delivered in Brian Cox's full thesp kind of "fuck off." He's got that real strength and power behind it. He's a muscular figure within it. There's some real breakout characters in here as well. So breakout performances. Kieran Culkin as Roman Roy is just playing an absolute blinder. Roman doesn't have the business acumen of his brother Kendall. However, he does have some of his father's sharp wit and tongue. And as a result, he's got a lot of the funniest lines in the piece. He's a little bit of a fuck up. He's a little bit of a mess. But at the same time, his marbles are all in the right place. And so as a result, he sort of scythes in and out of the plot. He's always sitting on the sidelines, watching everybody very carefully. You can actually get the sense that Logan probably admires Roman more than the others, even though he knows he'd be the biggest disaster in charge of the company. He's got a certain bastardness to him that his father knows will serve him well in the future. You got Shiv, played by Sarah Snook, who she's actually moved on from the family. She went to work in politics instead. And a big running theme of their business dealings is that they're actually sort of in bed with the president. Logan Roy has things on the president, and as a result, he can sort of call on him at moments of need and dire circumstances and that sort of thing. Shiv, though, she may well be her father's favorite in some ways, the way a daughter often is in terms of sibling rivalry and all that kind of thing. If you've got one daughter, there tends to be the one he calls her Pinky. He's obviously got a soft spot for her, but she feels that her brothers are just these bumbling idiots, and that her with her political nous could actually move in and be fresh face for the company. She can be the woman in charge. There's an ongoing plot thread about her husband, Tom, again played by Matthew McFadden. He is put in charge of the cruise division, which he's initially very, very happy about, until on his first day, he realizes that the guy he's taking over from is attempting to shred documents left, right, and center because the cruise division was involved in a lot of, should we say, legacy sexual assaults and bad behavior.
Right.
And so it ends up being a complete and utter poison chalice for him. And Matthew McFadden's performance as Tom is absolutely wonderful. He's a comedy fool at the start. He's got a lot of the really funny, sort of bumbling kind of lines, but he's an interesting character in that he actually didn't come from money. They always refer to him as sort of like a Midwestern bumfuck, the sort of, a country mouse that made his way into the family. But he actually made his way in with a sort of a genuine love for Shiv. They have quite a complicated relationship in that they're both very ambitious and they're both very mercenary. But at the same time, there is a genuine love for each other underneath. They just have an understanding that at the end of the day, this is ruthless business. And if ruthless business demands it, then their relationship will suffer. And so you've got that multi-layer thing. And do you see what I mean about these are all two-dimensional characters
that
have been given 3 dimensions? The writing is just absolutely exceptional. The thing that impresses me most about Succession actually isn't just the Shakespearean stuff. It's not the way it's shot, which is beautiful. It's not the pacing of the thing. There's so many quality things about this show. The thing that impresses me the most about it is its consistency. Because I'm up to date with this. So at the time of recording, that's 26 episodes in. And there is not a single bad episode. In fact, there's not even a single less than stellar episode. And when I think of that level of consistency in a TV series, there are very, very few shows that achieve it. Off the top of my head, there's only one that's shining out, actually, and that's The Sopranos.
Yeah.
And even then, The Sopranos had episodes that maybe weren't quite as good as the others. I would say perhaps Succession is even more consistent than that. It is unbelievable how well-written, how well-rounded, how they always find another angle, another place to come from. They've got about 8 different plot threads spinning, but all of them are really easy to keep track of. Characters are developing in realistic ways while keeping their original qualities. And there's discussion of that. And can people change? And where should the business move going forward? Where's the modern world going with businesses? All these stacks upon stacks upon stacks. It's just a sheer quality production. It feels like forgive it, it's about billionaires, etc. But it's a Rolex watch. It's a Rolls Royce. It ticks, it moves, it does exactly what it's supposed to do. I haven't seen it miss a beat once. It's made me laugh out loud just about every episode, although I wouldn't call it a comedy. It's just a very, very good drama with, all drama should have levity.
Absolutely.
When the levity comes in with this, it's so funny. It turns the show for a brief moment into a comedy. And then it goes back to being a drama / Shakespearean tragedy. I mean, think about what I'm talking about here for a minute. I mean, that's kind of unbelievable.
Yeah.
That is really, really unbelievable. There are very few shows that manage to pull this thing off. Succession has had a ridiculous amount of hype. Like I said, you've been seeing it absolutely everywhere. That's what turned me onto it. That's what made me go, oh shit, I must have missed a trick. Went back to it, thought, okay, well, this is obviously going to be good. I'll see what I think of it and do the review as usual. I've got up to date with it at the moment. I'm just sitting here thinking, I don't have a critique. There is, I literally, I always try and throw in some sort of negative, some sort of thing that I'm like, yeah, this could be a little bit better, or just for a bit of balance in a review. You always look for that little niggling thing that go, I kind of wish they changed this. With Succession, I don't have one. It's bang on. It's
every person I know who has seen this show, they have all said, you have to watch this. It is fucking unbelievably good.
Yeah.
And so
the writing is pin sharp. The casting is exceptional. It's an ensemble piece, and every single member of the ensemble is delivering believable, funny performances and genuinely heartfelt at points as well. It never slides too far in any one direction. It never becomes so much of a drama that the comedy suffers, or so much of a comedy that the tragedy suffers, or anything like that. It sits at its level. It found its level from episode 1, and it hasn't changed since then. Actually, you know what? I've just thought of something. I have one tiny critique. In episode 1, for about the first 20 minutes, it did a lot of camera zoom ins and zoom outs in that kind of documentary style. And in the first 20 minutes of episode 1, I found it a little bit distracting. And then it stops doing it entirely. It's like it realized 20 minutes into episode 1 that, hey, we're doing too much of that, stop it. And ever since then, it's been perfectly well shot. So there you go. Actually, that is literally actually the only thing I've thought while watching it that wasn't top notch. And it's a tiny thing that only irritated me slightly, and it stopped doing it 20 minutes in. And that's it.
So basically, in terms of criticism, it's negligible, ultimately.
Yeah, that's it. I literally don't have anything else other than watch Succession because there's something Roman about it. Yeah, there was sort of the Roman emperor and the squabbling sons and the city under fire and all that kind of stuff. There's something grandiose. And when you think about it as well, it's a perfect way to take that old story, that tale as old as time, and to put it into the modern world, to put it into a billionaire family on Wall Street with this huge empire underneath. I mean, those are the modern empires. We're living in that corporate world now where that is empire.
And Shakespeare himself, Coriolanus and stuff, he touched on like ancient Rome and the dynastics.
Yeah, and Julius Caesar and all that as well. But yeah, it's got that level of sort of pomp without ever disappearing up its own arse. And the soundtrack is wonderful as well. And it knows when to take itself seriously. And man, I'm just rambling now. Succession is absolutely fantastic. If, like me, you missed out on it on the first go round, congratulations. You have 26 episodes of just some of the finest TV since The Sopranos and The Wire.
Is it?
And there we are.
Is it still an ongoing show, or is it?
Yeah,
it is. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It moves at quite a slow pace, which I kind of love because the main plot threads move slowly, but because there's so many characters and it's such an ensemble piece, it's the weaving in and out of the main plot thread as the main plot thread lumbers forward. And in a lesser writing's hands, it would be too slow.
But there's going to be more seasons then, or is it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. As far as I understand it, yeah, I'll be very, very surprised otherwise. I would imagine with this level of writing, it's got to have at least 5 or 6. I would have thought.
What is this? Is it the third one that's just?
Yeah, third at the moment. As of the date of recording, there have been 6 episodes released, 10 episodes per season. So 26 episodes to get through. And please, please, please get on it. You will not be disappointed.
Sweet.
Okay, then. Well, trivia to finish off. I thought we'd do billionaires.
Billionaires? That lovely demographic.
Nice little bit of filthy lucre, which is exactly what Succession is all about. But just to finish off with, because billionaires, well, it's the one of the big topics of the modern day, isn't it? Billionaires and their bad behavior, etc., etc. Let's start off with this one. The number of billionaires exploded during the past year. Yes, that's during the pandemic. To its current total of 2,755. That's 660 more people than last year, meaning a new billionaire was added to the tally every 17 hours. Their total net worth is $13.1 trillion, which is dollars, by the way, $5 trillion more than last year. In fact, in the first month of the pandemic, US billionaires collectively added $300 billion to their wealth. Yeah, sorry, this trivia is going to make you very angry, I know, but for good reason. Yes, the pandemic's actually been very, very good for billionaires. They've been making more money than ever. Long may it continue as far as they're concerned.
Fucking hell, man.
Among the 2,755 billionaires is God. God Nissanov is a Russian property developer who received the Order of Friendship from the Russian president for his contribution to the country's economy. According to his Wikipedia page, he speaks 6 languages. So that's about 6,903 short of a proper deity. And if there's one thing we know about God, he has lots of children. While Nissanov has 3 himself, a virile 25% of billionaires have 4 children. And like US President Donald Trump, 17%, that's obviously an old article, 17% have 5 or more, according to data from 1996 to 2015, analysed by GoCompare. So yeah, I guess, if you got that kind of money, just pop them out. Everybody building little empires in the background.
Gee, oh mate, this fucking makes you sick.
They will be the Kendalls and Romans and Shivs in the years to come. Yeah,
just probably without the wit.
Yes, yeah.
Anything else that redeems them.
Bring on the cyberpunk future. J.K. Rowling is the first author to become a billionaire solely through her books. She first joined the list in 2004 and fell from it in 2012 due to philanthropic donations and Britain's high tax rates. Rowling donated about 16% of her wealth, or $160 million, to organizations such as the Multiple Sclerosis Society.
160 million? Holy shit.
She is that rarest of things, a self-made billionaire. Most billionaires came from money to start with because it's almost impossible to achieve it otherwise. But yes, she has, I believe when she was writing the Harry Potter book, she was struggling. She was on benefits. She had absolutely no money at all. And now we're sitting here 20 years later. And I think actually it's been 20 years since the first film. But anyway, she's now sitting on billions. So good for her.
I mean, yeah, have you heard of Elizabeth Holmes, Theranos?
Yeah.
So I think she was if not one of the first self-made female billionaires, but obviously she's currently on trial because she's a psychopathic fraudster. But
So there might even be some correlation between psychopathy, sociopathy, and being a billionaire. I mean,
might be, yeah.
Maybe. Oh, speaking of which, that's a good link. In 2012, Donald Trump attempted to sue Timothy O'Brien because the author called him a millionaire instead of a billionaire. The suit was dismissed by lower court, and Trump also lost the case at appeals court. 3 unnamed sources in the book Trump Nation, The Art of Being Donald, cite Trump's net worth as $150 million to $250 million. However, Trump's lawyer says the net worth is more than $7 billion. Trump also adds to his net worth depending on his daily mood.
So, you tried to sue somebody because, as far as you're concerned, they made a mistake about the amount of money you have.
Yep.
Okay, why is that defamatory?
Well, interestingly, he lost. So the presumption there is that Donald Trump, as he always has done, has refused to let go how much he actually owns. And there have been many, many theories as to how little money he actually has. A lot of people say he's got absolutely no money at all. He's actually massively in debt. But of course, he won't let that kind of thing be public.
I know that he was POTUS, but still, stuff like that for a power-crazed, malignant narcissist, he's not very good at it.
No.
Because that level...
Just about every business he's ever had has failed, yeah.
No, but I mean, there's that, but also, taking somebody to court because they called you a millionaire instead of a billionaire. I mean... fucking, Machiavellianism. I mean, this guy sucks at being on the dark triad. Everyone knows what he is,
For certain. John D. Rockefeller is still the richest American to have ever lived. At the peak of his net worth, he would be worth $24 billion in modern American currency. Not quite as much as Bezos, but when you look at their wealth in regards to US GDP, it tells a different story. Rockefeller's worth was the equivalent of nearly 2% of the national GDP, meaning that Bezos would have to be worth $350 billion to keep up.
Fucking hell.
So there you go, John D. Rockefeller, the OG, so to speak.
Yeah.
I always say, I never know if it's Bezos or Bezos.
I always say Bezos.
Yeah, well, he is on this podcast now anyway. We're on Amazon Podcasts as well, considering how anti-corporate we are. Yeah, I noticed the other day that one of our podcast providers was linking us there. We don't make any money off of Amazon because, we'd feel bad about it, I suppose. But there you go.
Well, I mean, he is a colossal arsehole. So, yeah, I wouldn't want to take any money from him.
Well, that's just God banned us off there in the first place. So there you go. Fuck you. Anyway. During Augustus Caesar's reign as Emperor of Rome, the empire accounted for more than a quarter of the world's economic output. Some historians estimate that Augustus's earnings were about 20% of what the empire made. In modern currency, that net worth will be about $5 trillion.
Holy shit.
Sort of makes sense when you think about it, doesn't it? If you were emperor of the Roman Empire was as huge as it was. Yeah, $5 trillion.
I actually read a small list where it said, there are trillionaires who have existed in history, and here they are. And I think the first entry was Genghis Khan.
Yeah, there were a few Arab kings as well that had a ridiculous amount of wealth. Yeah. Absolutely. And my last fact here, and it's a depressing one. But if you ever
because all of these have been really positive and affirming.
And,
speaking to the philanthropic, altruistic spirit that resides in every human being who's ever lived.
Well, just to show a bit of economic equality that we live in these days, let's just finish off with this. If you earn $100,000 a month, you will be a billionaire in the year 2853.
So if you earn $100,000 a month, from which point?
From now.
From now.
Yeah. You'll be a billionaire in the year 2853, assuming as well you didn't spend any of it, which is kind of mad, really, isn't it? You think if you were making $100,000 a month, you would be considered rich by just about anybody's standards. But it would still take you pretty much 800 odd years to get billionaire status. Just 1 billion. not the hundreds of billions that we're talking about on the top of the chart. So, I mean, don't feel bad about it. Feel good about yourself, actually, because you probably didn't fuck anybody over to get there, especially not, poor developing countries and all the rest of it. But there you go. End of my rant anyway.
Anyone who is earning $100,000 a month and is not happy with that, they can go fuck themselves really hard in the sphincter with something long and rusted.
Well, what a note to end the podcast on anyway. Yes, we're not jealous. We're just bitter. Yes. Thank you very much.
There is a difference.
Yeah. Thank you very much for listening to the Cinementalist podcast this week. We're going to go and record the premium episode now. Liam's got, I believe, 3 extra takes.
I do indeed. Yes, I've got 3 films to waffle on about this week.
And after that, we're going to have, a little while ago on the premium podcast, I did a really big quiz and it went down really well. And there was a round in particular that everybody seemed to like called the 4-Fact Film Star Fake Out, which is where I read 4 facts about a film star from their IMDb trivia pages, and Liam and the audience at home has to guess which film star it is. So I've got 20 of those to get through. I don't know if we're going to do all of them. But yes, a bit of a quiz to finish off this
No
week.
fucking cheating.
Yeah, I suppose you could just Google it, couldn't you? But where's the fun in that?
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah.
Anyways, thank you very much for listening. Please do check out cinementalist.com for a link to our Patreon page if you'd like more content from us. Please do follow us on Twitter at Cinementalcast, and you can follow Liam at...
I'm Liam at the movies, and my handle is Wacko Jacko's Flicks.
But yes, providing you don't see us on the premium one, I guess we'll see you for the free one next week. Anything to add, Liam?
As always, thank you very much, guys. Really hope you enjoy the content. And yes, keep watching good shit. Keep having a good time.
Excellent. Yeah, take it easy, guys. See you either in the next one or next week.